All right, boys, let's talk Champions League. Christian Pulisic had a goal against Liverpool on Tuesday, but it wasn't enough for AC Milan as they lost 3-1. But how about these numbers? Since his arrival at Milan last season, he is number one, tied for number one, but still number one, in goal contributions among all players in Serie A. Impressive, no doubt. Equally impressive was the goal itself. Shaka, what did you make of that early strike against Liverpool?
Impressive for Christian Pulisic, just throughout. Listen, I think the goal is just one of those things you expect from him, but I think more to the point, Christian Pulisic and his performances for Milan have been simply outstanding. And this is from someone who I thought was making the wrong move in going to a club like AC Milan.
Why?
I thought that was a little bit above where he needed to be. For all his talents, didn't really make it to Dortmund, didn't really make it to Chelsea. And I know there were extenuating circumstances, but I just thought a step down to a lower, probably Premier League club would suit him better. Going to a club like Milan, and while Milan aren't the club that certainly I remember from the 90s, I think there's still a certain amount of expectation around that football club. And I just wondered how that would kind of affect Christian Pulisic's ability to settle in and find his game and rediscover his confidence. I was wrong. I hold my hands up. I was very wrong about that. Or more to the point, I think Christian Pulisic just found a level that surprised a lot of people. And credit to him for that. So it's less. So I say that to say it's less a case of me being wrong than Christian Pulisic just going there and asserting his talents in a way that I don't think many other players could or would have.
What about the goal, Herc? Did you see him assert his talents there? Because it was kind of it's not a solo run, but he basically picks up the ball at midfield.
It's vintage Pulisic. It's everything that he showcases how good he can be. The drive, the speed. He assesses whether he should pass the ball or not, and then decides to pick his spot and puts it in. It's all the great things about Christian Pulisic. He's one of the more prolific of 1v1 players out there, and if you give him open space, more often than not, he's going to punish you. So that's not surprising. It's also not surprising he scored against Liverpool. For whatever reason, this man loves playing against Liverpool. Back in the Chelsea days, it's just a team that he gets really up for. And it's a Champions League game, so you would understand disappointing with the result, and maybe one or two plays where I felt he wasn't himself, gave the ball away, but certainly in front of goal, certainly when it's time to attack, that's when he's on. And I don't know if I agree with Shaq about disappointed or surprised by the move. Italian football has been fickle over the years. Certainly Inter the last 2 to 3 seasons has been a mainstay, but Milan gave up 19 points to him last season, so certainly not the Milan of old, like you mentioned. Napoli is not the Napoli of old. Juve, for all their problems, still can't get it together in that sense. So I think the level's good for him. I think it's turning heads. I'm not surprised to see him doing this well. I'm surprised that he's doing better than everybody else on his team. I really do think he's a standout player. I know we all look at Rafa Leao and think he's the guy there. And maybe the statistics will show it, and that is a little bit surprising to me because he's a frustrating player to watch at times. But I really do think the one player you can trust on in that offensive end for Milan is Christian Pulisic.
I mean, to that point, really, when you hear people talk about AC Milan, they always say the best player is Rafael Leao. But if we think of best being most consistent, then to your point, it probably is Christian Pulisic. Like, he's there every game, and when you hear people complain about Rafael Leao, it is that he drifts in and out.
I don't disagree with the word you just said. You look at that lineup, Morata, the inconsistencies was plagued him throughout his career. Rafa Leao, whether it's with Portugal or with Milan, for as high of a ceiling that he does have as a talented footballer, most often than not, he leaves you frustrated in that final third. Wrong decisions. Christian Pulisic will always look to make the right decision, and if you give him a second, give him an ounce of space or an inch of space, he's going to make you pay. I think he's been, out of all the offensive players dating back from last season, even Oliver Giroud, Leao, Loftus-Cheek when he was in his moment, he was by far the most consistent.
Is it just playing time, Shaka, or have you seen something else in Christian Pulisic at Milan that we didn't see at Chelsea?
I think it's more than playing time. And again, you come into the whole Chelsea situation. I thought was an odd one for Pulisic from the start. Sarri signs him, but then says it's not really. I didn't sign him. It's not a player I wanted, and that's a difficult circumstance for anybody. So I think Christian Pulisic came into a club. And listen, I understand despite what was happening at Dortmund, a club like Chelsea come calling, you respond, you go. But then you find yourself in this situation. That's not his making, and it's not ideal. And then Sarri's out the door, and then you have another manager who's coming in and trying to fix things, and you may not necessarily be his player. So I think he came into a situation that didn't serve him well. That worked against him. So almost it's not necessarily about playing time, but just about the dysfunction of Chelsea as a football club that affected Christian Pulisic. Which is why, again, I thought, listen, get away from that. Find yourself somewhere where you're settled. You know you're a star player. You know you're wanted, and nobody questions that. And you find, as I say, you find that voice in inverted commas that you see so often with the US men's national team, where nobody questions that. Nobody questions whether Pulisic is going to be starting, whether he's a star or not, and he rises to that. And so I thought, go to a club where you have that same circumstance. I'm not, again, going in, I wasn't sure that Milan was that club because of their struggles, because of a fan base that still remembers the 90s. But he is gone, and as I say, I cannot think of another player who's had a couple of moves similarly, before, and then found at a club like Milan, found the kind of form that Pulisic has.
Certainly enjoying it. 3 goals, 2 assists so far this season across all comps. He was not, however, the only American to score on Tuesday. Weston McKennie with a goal as Juventus beat PSV 3-1. A PSV team, by the way, which featured Malik Tillman and Richie Ledesma in their starting 11.
Right back.
Weston McKennie now top 2, passing to Marcus Beasley for Champions League goals by a U.S. international. Hurt pretty good for a guy that Juventus didn't want 2 months ago?
2 months ago, the year before that,
the year before
that, the year before that. I mean, they thought an American player, a U.S. men's national team World Cup veteran, wouldn't be serviceable in a U.S. tour. They told him, stay home.
Right.
Stay here in Italy. You're not coming to the U.S. tour with us. And then he goes to the U.S. tour. And then he's a valuable player. According to some pundits, he's a good role player. But he had double-digit assists last year. And yeah, he's good, but he doesn't deserve that money. And he comes in and again proves with another coach that can be that player. And he scores a Champions League goal. I don't know how many times you can write Weston McKennie out. We could sit here and say, oh, he's a little heavy set. He looked heavy set with the U.S. men's national team. Oh, we should criticize him for what we heard about the negotiations or him even entertaining an offer with Cincinnati FC or FC Cincinnati. That didn't fall through. Maybe he was just trying to get more money out of Juventus. What we can't criticize is when he gets an opportunity to play, he performs, he responds, and he always earns his spot. So regardless of how many fans or experts out there want to downplay the importance of Weston McKennie with Juventus over the years, he's been one of the consistent performers. And this isn't just a bias or recency bias of what we're seeing right now. This is, if you go back through the years, him continually playing and performing.
He does, Shaka, divide opinion, to Herc's point. Where do you come down on him as a player?
He's a kind of player that we see from time to time in world football. And I say that in the context that he goes to Juventus, raises eyebrows, certainly with the initial move, and you wonder, does Weston McKennie, just in terms of his name, his status within the game, is this the kind of player that you normally associate with Juventus? And you think, well, let's see. And he comes in, he does a job, he does well enough, but he's the kind of player I think you appreciate most when you're a teammate. Not when you're a fan, not when you're sitting on desks such as this and you're trying to analyze and break down.
What does he do that makes you say that?
He, let me see, how best do I describe this? And Herc would know exactly the kind of player I'm talking about, where as a player on the pitch, it's hard to identify special moments or special qualities, but you always know where that player is. You always know that if I give the ball away, he's going to be there. Or you need an out ball, he's going to be there. Without really doing anything that you write home about, you just know that player is going to be there. I'll give 2 examples. One, a teammate of mine, and this many people would not know of, a guy by the name of Linvoy Primus, who I played with at Portsmouth. Similar situation. every preseason was told that he was surplus to requirements. Didn't start the first 4 or 5 games of every season. By the end of the campaign, he played 90% of the fixtures. And then they would tell him, you're surplus to requirements. And I was at Pompey for 3 years, and it happened all those 3 years. The other player that comes to mind is Gary Neville, who at Manchester United, who a lot of people would remember from those incredible Manchester United teams of the 90s. I can't tell you why Gary Neville was a good right back. I really can't. There is nothing that Gary Neville did that I can recall. But I played with Trevor Sinclair at West Ham, and Trevor Sinclair swore in playing with the England national team that he was the best player to have behind you. That whenever you gave the ball away, you knew Gary Neville was going to be right there. Whenever you found yourself going down a blind alley and needed an overlapping run, somehow he could just kick the ball and Gary Neville would somehow be there. It's just some of those undescribables that, as an observer, you can't identify and you can't say this is his strength or this is what he does well. But when you're on the park, you just know that that person is going to be there wherever you need them to be.
You take that, what Shaka's talking about, you add the assists from last year, the goals from today, and some of the other, he scored some goals at Juventus. That's a pretty complete player.
It's not only a complete player, but you're right, it's an overlooked player, not a player that's often appreciated, but he proves himself. And the players appreciate it, but the coaches. Andrea Pirlo, he plays under Andrea Pirlo. Cristiano comes in, and he's going to play as a right midfielder, as a left midfielder. Not because he attacks well, because he's going to protect that side, because there are other players who can do that. And then, often than not, he gets into the box and does what he does very well. He arrives late, and he scores goals or he has assists. Maximiliano Allegri, he's an ultra-defensive coach, loves the way that he plays, has played him as a right back. Now you got... Mota comes in and people are like, well, he's not going to play with Mota. That's not going to happen. He won't play in the middle. We had Gab Marcotti come on the show and says there's no way he's going to play in the middle for this guy. Plays in the middle, gets his Champions League goal. So there's something to be said about a guy who continues to thrive regardless of the situation and continues to prove himself.
Real Madrid, they played on Tuesday, 3-1 winners over Stuttgart. Lots of people talking about Endrick's goal in stoppage time. They're the headline from us. Happy end, as he put the finishing touches on the big victory. But there's quite a reaction to the goal, because yes, it was a golazo, but also lots of people think he should have passed. Carlo Ancelotti there, Endrick taking that shot, you can see what he says. Thibaut Courtois, if he misses, I kill him. Joking, of course. If he doesn't give it to Vinny or Bellingham and he scores, everyone will be quiet. Rudiger, thank God it went well, because if not, big problems. Rodrigo, Endrick is crazy. He did something that nobody would do. So yeah, it was kind of a 3-on-1, 3-on-2. Endrick kept the ball. The other side of the story, though, is the goalie, Shaka. How much did he contribute?
Well, yes, there's that. But as a goalkeeper, probably not expecting that shot
no
from Endrick.
No chance you expect
at the time. So you're looking either side of at the side of Endrick, you've got Vinicius Jr. to his right, Mbappe to his left, and
terrible options, right?
Right, and you're thinking, okay, which is going to be his choice? And then all of a sudden he pulls the trigger from where he does. And as a keeper, you can see in the previous highlight, the keeper is still moving. So he's not set, he's not expecting a shot, and it beats him. Credit to Endrick for that. I guess it comes as some comfort later on. At least you're 2-1 up. Can you imagine had it still been 0-0 in the 90th minute, and you make that decision and you don't score? The keeper makes a brilliant save, whatever it is. And I think that's what people are alluding to. That's what Courtois and Rudiger.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Was it, I know it's like a 3-on-2 and there's a numbers game. Was it that obvious of a spot where he has to give the ball up? Because there's an angle from on high where Mbappe, there's a defender between he and Mbappe. And the other lap, the Vinny overlap it's coming slower. Like, was it really that bad of a choice?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Really?
Yeah.
Listen,
you give a player 10 shots from that distance in any circumstance, he scores 1.
Right.
The obvious decision, the only decision at that point, really, is which side do you go? And the question is, how do you kind of give them the overload? How do you draw defenders to one side to maybe give the other attacker a little bit more freedom, a little bit more space to get his shots off? That is a higher probability shot to it. I guess, again, you're Real Madrid, you're 2-1 up, so that's fine. You find the back of the net, again, fine. But had it been 0-0, and you do that, and you do not score, I think the implications and the long-term knock-on is a whole lot different.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the last angle. There's Arda Güler right behind
Yes.
him. He's got his hands like,
Right.
what are you doing?
Right.
And then it works, and he starts clapping.
It's like in the NBA when you can see like a coach on the sideline being like, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. Oh,
Yeah.
guy hits the three.
Okay.
Right.
I think the only reason this isn't that big of an issue is because it's a young player who's coming on, and the scoreline is pretty much already, the game's already.
So it's not
done.
selfishness, it's the
But could you imagine?
precociousness
And
of
forget
youth.
about it for Endrick for a second. But think about this low percentage shot as Shaka's putting it. If it's Kylian Mbappe who takes that, or Vinny who takes that, and brushes off the other, we'd still be talking about it today.
Yeah.
This happened over the week.
Really?
That's how low of a percentage shot that was. He took it, it went in. You have a laugh about it, and you move on. But certainly under different circumstances, you'd be all over him.
What do you say to him as a teammate in that spot? Because he did, again, score.
Yeah. Just make sure you score. That's
Really?
the only thing you can say. Yeah, if you're going to take that.
Mbappe looked frustrated.
Well, if you're going to take that risk, if
Right.
you're going to take that high percentage shot, you better score. You better make it worth it. You better make it pay off. If not, there's going to be an issue.